Faith is a lifestyle. It is the mountain on which you stand that makes you believe that a dream is actually attainable. It is the concrete evidence that makes the logically impossible seem completely tangible. It seemed hopeless, but faith. I can't prove it, but faith. I can't explain it, but my faith has given me peace.
I'm a Christian with $100 million vision. Can nobody box me and say that's a contradiction? Goal driven, God just blessed me with the ambition. Look up, winner is the rest of definition.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me give you the past 5 days of black news. Shall we? No riots will be included on this report. A Florida woman murdered her autistic child and called the police and lied by saying that 2 black men kidnapped him. Later, they found that she killed her own baby. A woman in Central Park called the police and told them that a black man was harassing her and her dog. Later, they found that the black man simply asked her to leash the rambunctious little rascal. A Florida youth pastor called the police and told them that 2 black men carjacked him and locked him in a hotel. Later, it was found that he was lying to cover up the fact that he was soliciting male prostitutes for sex. And of course, the big news of the last 5 days is that a Minnesota police officer murders a black man by choking him until he was dead in the middle of the street in broad daylight while 3 other police watched in the presence of witnesses knowing that he was on camera. Why do you think people thought? Why do you think these people thought that the best idea for covering up their egregious and deplorable sins was by saying that a black man did it? Why did that police officer have no consciousness or any common sense or basic human dignity while murdering a helpless man in broad daylight? To understand this basic psychological lack of fundamental human instincts, I'd like to go back for a second. I'd like to take you back to the first viral video to ever happen. The first video to go viral, 1991. I was 11 years old, and this video played on repeat on my screen, which, by the way, was black and white because my parents wouldn't buy me a color one for my room. Yeah, I was 11. The first video to ever go viral was that of police brutality. Police brutality invented the viral video. So many people were shocked and appalled, but to us, it was surreal. It was our normal. It was our truth. But why is it every time you want to cover up your deplorable and horrendous sins, you find a way to blame blacks? I'll tell you why. Because more often than not, it works. You know it works. So you keep doing it. It's your normal. It's your truth. You know the system doesn't work. You know the system brutalizes black men. That's why you use it. We need not explain this anymore. Everyone knows. Especially those who pretend like they don't. We can once again blame the bad cops, say most cops are good, and say this, then go back to the same old way of life, the same old system that allowed the cop to exist in the first place. Yes, there are bad cops and there are good cops, and there are people who do their job well and people who do their job poorly. And then there is a system that allows the murder of people in cold blood and the killer to go unchecked and continue his job as normal. It's not enough for us to say the system is broken. You already know it's broken. Fix it. Because Ahmaud Arbery was killed, and the excuse was that a black man was breaking into houses. Then his killers walked the streets unchecked and unbothered for 2 months while they wrote false reports, covered up evidence, called in favors, and lied about what happened. Fix the broken system. You know it's broken, and the only reason you haven't fixed it because you benefit from its brokenness. Fix it. This is The Elevation. My name is Shawn Riff-Raff. Let's go. King.
Royalty. MC, stand up, brand up, fam up, hand out, no way, hands up, know what, name that, it's mine, claim that, it's time, message, we shine, above all, the decline, the darkness cannot last, the shadow of my past, before I gain knowledge of heritage I have, the bloodline that I share, most powerful out here, the mover of mountains is who I am touting, the richest among us is who I'm the son of, from sundown to sun up, that's how I then come up, position is just mine, the favor in due time, can't have it, man you lying, the powerless you trying, enemy beneath me, is nothing to teach me, the people receive me, cause my God complete me, and my God does keep me, and my God that free me, and my God redeem me, and my God relieve me, I'm king, dominion, crown me, I am winning my position, God's giving, God's sending, God's choosing.
And with all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I have with me today, joining me in this conversation, this really, really, really important conversation. I could say really a few more times and you will understand how important this particular conversation is a good friend of mine, legendary in the radio arena, at least to me anyway, and the host of Matt Anderson's show right here on Shawn Riff-Raff Studios. My man, Matt Anderson. What's up, brother?
Hey, Shawn, how you doing, bro?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Man, all is well in the hood, man. I'm inside. I ain't got the Rona. Ducking 45. Hey, man, everything's good.
Man, I want to start, in the intro, I talked a lot about, everybody sort of knows about what it is about. Everybody knows about the systemic racism or the injustice that happens in this country, and it's like they pretend. I've talked to so many of my white friends who I don't call them bad people, because I don't call them racist or bad people or anything like that. I actually refer to them as friends, but even as friends, they have a hard time understanding, as if in some way they just shut themselves off to what happens. But before I go into that, I want to get your feelings from you about the current condition of the country. Either what do you feel like is happening right now? Why is it the way it is right now? And I kind of want to just get your feelings before I get into my conversation. I really want to get into your feelings, how you feel, and how you assess what's going on right now.
Well, the wound of racism, classism, selfishness, self-righteousness has gotten infected.
Yeah.
I think what's happening now, what we're seeing in terms of, we saw the slope, with the coronavirus hitting the United States and around the world, it kept going up and up and up and up and expanding. I think that same thing is happening with regard to racism. Right. I think that same thing is happening now, and we're seeing it begin to expand. We're seeing, in my entire life, I've never seen this level of protests anywhere. Rodney King, what you name it, any kind of police brutality, whether it was Eric Garner, whether it was Trayvon Martin, whether it's police brutality or any other kind of community outrage with regard to abuse of power by individuals in power, especially those who are receiving their paychecks based on a tax dollar.
Right.
We've never seen this level. And I'm talking about every single major city in the United States of America is having some sort of protest, some degree of violence, some degree of stuff burning down. America is burning. Okay. And so we really got to pay attention to what's happening here. But the sad part is, we saw the 45th president of the United States come out today and all but blow a dog whistle and tell everybody, hey, we're going to protect your Second Amendment rights. He didn't say nothing about First Amendment rights. He said, we're going to protect your Second Amendment rights. Then if these states can't seem to get it together, I'm going to send in military personnel, heavily armed military personnel, thousands and thousands to your city to bring back order. Didn't say anything about protecting First Amendment rights for individuals who are exercising their freedom of speech. So for me, that puts us in a very dangerous position. And I believe that individuals who are complicit in this same thing are just as complicit as those other police officers who are helping to hold down George Floyd. They're just as guilty as the guy who actually had his knee on his neck. I believe that fellow Trumpians are just as guilty of this violence and the violence that is inevitably to come because of the words that he spoke today in the Rose Garden.
You know what's crazy? It's almost like, in my opinion, it's almost like he purposely makes a distraction to not deal with an issue.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt.
You know,
No doubt.
so I hear him talk a lot about Antifa, and while that is a thing, not to take away from it, it is a thing.
Yeah.
It's not the thing that's happening. And what I have not heard him address at any point was the concern of the people, and I believe that he doesn't really understand it.
Well, think about this. I mean, it's three things that I've kind of learned over the years: distraction, deception, and disease. If you think about one of the best defensive players in the game of basketball was what? Magic Johnson with the Magic Johnson no look pass.
Right.
He throws the ball one way while faking you out to go the other way.
Right.
Okay, so all of your energy and momentum is going this direction while he really is meaning to go that direction.
Right.
Distraction gets you off course, gets you focused on something else while you can't pay attention to the main thing. Keep the main thing the main thing. Then deception is just out and out lies. We
Right.
know that he speaks nothing but lies. So, he's the father of lies, meaning that the enemy is the father of lies.
Right.
So, if you think about that, and then disease, we're not only dealing with dis-ease with regard to our physical bodies with this virus that's going around, but also the disease, in my view, of racism, of white
Right.
supremacy.
Absolutely.
It's never been dealt with. We've never whittled it all the way out. We've never gone through chemotherapy or had surgery to have it fully removed. So now we have a deformity in the American society. It's really deformed. We never healed after the Civil War. We thinking, okay, it's going to be okay now. The enslaved Africans are free. You get 40 acres and a mule. The next president comes in right after Abraham Lincoln is assassinated, and he rescinds that order. So that access to wealth and property and self-sufficiency went away. And we can go through the World War II, GI bills, civil rights movement, protests.
Right.
We understand redlining and police brutality, all that stuff, man. We're clear on it. And so I forgot who said it was racism is just as American as apple pie.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, it's
that's
what we do. People say, wow, it's terrible that the country's broken. No, it's not. It's functioning matter of fact.
It's functioning how it was intended to.
They're making America great again. They're recalibrating it. They're giving it a tune-up to back to where it was. You heard him today. I'm the law and order president. Well, that harkens back to the Bull Connor days in down south. That harkens back to Nixon. When they do use brute force to keep people in order as opposed to considering compassion and and being concerned about other people's physical, emotional, psychological, needs.
Right. And I almost, I feel sorry for people who think that you can change the behavior and that's going to solve the problem. And it's like you can't just tell people to act right, and that's going to solve a problem in which it's almost as if it's almost as if you don't really understand the problem, therefore you can't solve it. Therefore, you don't know, let's say you have an autistic kid and they yell all the time, and instead of understanding that the kid has needs that you need to address, you just beat them. And you think that controlling their behavior will make the problem go away. And it actually won't. You actually end up making the problem a whole lot worse. And I think that's what's happening in this country. Like with every time you ignore the problem, and I say this to people, and this strong the way I say it, but we are dealing with a sector of Americans who have been subject to tyranny from the country that they live in for generations, and on every single level. So we're not just and I think that a lot of people can't get past the individual scenarios to see the bigger picture. It's not just about a singular police brutality moment. And like I showed earlier in the introduction, we watched the first viral video in this country to show police brutality was 1991, when we had to watch police brutally beating Rodney King. And it was like they brutally beat him on the side of the road with nightsticks, just brutally beat him. I don't even remember what they pulled him over for. but it doesn't matter because they brutally beat him on the road, and it wasn't a, oh no, y'all shouldn't do this, or wasn't a
Right.
thought into it. It was just, this is what we doing, which means that you've done it before. And if it's so easy for you, it means that you've done it before, and before that, and before that, and before that, and it's a part of the system that this particular behavior is okay. It just so happened that you got filmed. Right, that it got filmed this time in an era where there weren't really cameras like that, unless somebody was putting on an actual show.
Power
You know?
concedes nothing without a demand. Frederick Douglass. Power concedes nothing without a demand. And the power structure has been in power for so long
Right.
that what little bit that they here, to quote Public Enemy, is fear of a black planet. Let me just break it all the way down. You know, I agree that not all white folks are bad. I believe that all police are not bad. I've got good friends who are in law enforcement. I've got family members who are Caucasian. So, you know, I love everybody, but it's a heart issue that we're dealing with. We have a heart issue we're dealing with individuals who now, if you have a wicked heart, you know, then out of the heart flow the issues of life. Okay, so if your heart is wicked and you got power now, a badge covering that heart,
That's right.
and a gun empowering you to be able to kill somebody, and handcuffs and a law to be able to allow you to incarcerate someone,
Right.
and nobody's looking, then you can abuse that power. And inevitably, if you're never checked, then what happens is it goes on to become more abusive, and it metastasizes into something else, and it becomes a cancerous thing. So I really believe that there are other good law enforcement officers that need to say something, other good individuals who are in positions of power in government that need to say something and do something and be held accountable or hold accountable their peers. What we're finding is there are not enough individuals who are their peers. Now, in today's and this week's protests, we've been seeing a lot of people who are non-black, folks who are out there in the streets.
Absolutely.
And those are the kinds of changes that are going to happen. The ones who are peacefully protesting, as well as those who are breaking windows, are not black. So until we start to see other individuals who look like those who are the offenders, you're never going to make any kind of adjustments. There's no reason to. If your heart is jacked up and there's nobody forcing you to do it, then you're just going to keep on doing what you want to do. And it's easy because of this uniform that we have, this mark that we have, because of the color of our skin. It's easy to identify one of those. Now, if you're Italian or you're Irish, you're Polish, you're German, you know, all of these other immigrants who came here voluntarily, you know, even some of the Irish, when they came here with the potato famine, they were abused or taken advantage of. Same thing with the Italians. They came here looking for a better life and things weren't cool, but eventually they could just shift and blend in with the popular general culture.
Right.
But we could never change. I don't care how free we got. We stayed black. Light skin, dark skin. It don't matter. We could tell it's some Africa in you. It's some African in you. So they could identify you much more easily, and they could say, okay, you're a former chattel. So now we're going to just figure out another way to take advantage of your slave labor or inexpensive labor.
Right. I think that we look at things so, and one of the things that I feel like we don't understand as a country or as a culture, as an American culture, we don't understand the depth of our responsibility to certain actions, and sometimes we can look at things individually as, it's a bad police. It's not just about the individual. It's about the system that allows the individual to exist.
No doubt.
And so, it can't just be every time this happens. This has happened three times in the last 2 weeks that we know of. Well, even with the things that I said in the intro, but I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about just the Ahmaud Arbery. I'm talking about just the Breonna Taylor. I'm talking about just with George Floyd. I'm talking about all of, just in the last couple of weeks, we've got all of this, and you can't just keep saying, we can't point at individual, or that's that individual, or is that individual, or is that individual, because it's an idea of even how the individuals are trained as a whole, and on top of all that, systemically, it's not just about the justice system. It's not just about policing. It's about the full justice system, but it's not just about policing. It's about once you 50% of all people who are incarcerated who are then found to be innocent, 50% of those are black men, right? And so, and so when you're looking at a number like that, it means there are more arrests of black men, even if the black man is not guilty. Then it is, less access to lawyers or less access to law. So the justice system doesn't work properly for black men. Look what happened to me. Look what happened to me. The department just doesn't work properly for black men. And so, but even when you come to that, the economic, the economic system in America doesn't work the same way for blacks. The education system in America doesn't work the same way for blacks. When you look at every single infrastructure in this country, it doesn't work. Like, I can almost guarantee you, and I watched CNBC earlier, a couple of days ago. I can almost guarantee you that when the country opens back up, right? And apartments and stuff are able to do evictions and foreclosures, I can guarantee you that that's going to come down harder on blacks. You know what I'm saying? And so we're in this country where all of these things culminate, and there is an explosion that happens over, something that's blatant. It's as blatantly wrong as the civil rights movement and water fountains and separate bathrooms, and that's common sense, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, it ain't, you don't even got to be that deep to understand that murdering somebody on the street without due process is wrong, right? But it's almost like we're blind to it, and there are people who live through every single institution of this country being set up differently and coming down harder on black people.
Well, I think there's a couple things I see here, man. One of which is us getting to know each other. If there's any kind of way we're going to get to a place of reconciliation or healing, we've got to get to know each other's heart. I think whether you're black, white, brown, Asian, whatever it is, your concern is to make sure, you're able to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. You want your family to be healthy. You want to be able to eat. You want to have a good sense of income. You don't want to have to stress about worrying of people taking things from you or doing things to you or your family. Everybody pretty much wants the same thing. But the challenge, I heard someone make a statement today, which I thought was really powerful. She said, I think it was Toni Morrison in a pre-recorded thing, said something to the effect of, if you have to put somebody on their knees to feel tall, there's something wrong with you. And so what we live inevitably in this system where it's designed to keep other people down, so the few, those at the very, very top, can feel big. Right. And there's more than enough resources financially to go around. Right. The fear, I think, there are layers and layers and layers of generational guilt that are in place because of the slavery thing. Had you just came correct with the healing process once it was over, then we could have begun to move forward. But we never got to a place of reconstruction as we did after the Civil War with the physical reconstruction and governmental reconstruction, but we never reconstructed societal norms. So black folks were relegated, and still are in many ways relegated, to being second class. And so they created systems to make us hate ourselves through media, through music, through movies, through school, through education or lack thereof. So they make us hate ourselves. So then what are we doing? We're killing ourselves. I hate myself and you look just like me, so I'm gonna kill you. And so then what do they say? Oh, a police officer killed a black man. Oh, but then they'll say, well, what about black on black crime? Okay, but wait a minute now. Hold up. What about black on black crime is police officers killing a civilian is governmental abuse, taxpayer funded abuse. But black on black crime is a societal or emotional person to person violation. Yeah, it's wrong, but it's a different wrong. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's one of my biggest concerns is how we start to water down the narrative. We can walk and chew bubblegum. We can talk about black on black crime. We can talk about other societal things that are not cool, but we got to make sure that we're keeping the main thing. Stay focused, because we get distracted so easily, man.
Right.
Ain't nobody talking about COVID-19, and there's thousands, if not millions, of people marching in the street. Right. COVID ain't going nowhere. But we now in the streets. Yeah, we shouting and hollering with no mask on. Ah, yeah. Okay, yeah, we have every right to be angry. But now 2 weeks from now, probably next week, you need to be going to check and see if you got a test. You need to check and see what's happening with that coronavirus. You know, so now they're killing us slowly. It's just so many diabolical ways that the enemy, when I say the enemy, I mean the devil. Now, I ain't talking about white folks, but the systems that gets into different people's minds, and because people inherently are wicked. We're born in sin, shaped in iniquity. We're born into it. It's who we are. Different. We have different forms of sins. It might be racism. It might be one thing for one person, another thing for another person. But I just believe that this sin of racism is something that is diabolical, because now it becomes societal. It's structural, and there's money behind it, and there's systems behind it, and there's government behind it. There's laws behind it, and the challenge, and I believe for the real change to begin to take place, is going to be peer-to-peer change. Because Trump, he is who he is. Every time he does something, I'm not surprised. I don't even fuss about it. I may point it out. I may draw attention to it, but there's no reason. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. We know who you are. If you ever want to know who somebody is, keep them talking long enough. They're going to tell you who they are. So we knew that 3-4 years ago. So now we mad because he's doing my thing is his co-conspirators. And those are the ones that I got a problem with. Those other elected officials who know better. And so the love of money or the love of power has blinded their minds. And so now they just love. Go ahead, man.
One, I can't say that Trump doesn't surprise me. I can't say that. Trump sometimes really does surprise me. Sometimes I'm like, because I thought the president was stronger than what he was. And you got to understand from a business guy's point of view, and I will never lie to anybody here. Before Trump ran for president or whatever, I have read every book that he wrote. I have been, inundated in, Trump world as far as how to run business and blah, 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 and appreciated his successes in business. Which I later learned that he was successful in marketing, but he wasn't as successful in business as I thought he was. But or has he portrayed to be? But that's
a showman.
That's the cost.
He's a showman. He's a salesman.
Right. But that's the cost of running for the presidency, right? All the being exposed on all of the things that maybe you wanted to keep in the dark, right? But when he ran for president, I was like, you know what? Maybe he will be good for us, right? So, I was hopeful. I was hopeful. I was, maybe he'll be good for us. And it gets to me. I am not numb to him. He gets worse every time to me. I'm not numb. I am not. I am not thinking about I have not become numb to him. Like, no, what you said was bad. You looting and shooting. You loot, we shoot.
Illusion
is horrific. I see.
Okay, you still there?
Yeah, I see. You loot, we shoot is horrific. You know what I'm saying?
Say that again.
You loot. You loot. When they loot, we shooting.
Yeah.
That's a horrific statement, right? That's a horrific statement that should never come from the president of a quote unquote democracy. And the whole we're going to police you into the behavior that we want to be. Where there's going to be violence in the street, it's going to be worse, and all of this stuff is like, I'm not accustomed to this. Like I haven't become numb to Trump in 3 years. Like this is, what you're saying is really bad. Like this is bad. While I understand that there are people in the streets who have no concern about Black Lives Matter, have no concern about the issues that are prevalent. I get it. There are people in the streets who are gung ho on anarchy, at any possible corner, and this is a good place for them to be opportunist. I get it. There are people in the streets who are looting because of opportunist reasons, not because of emotional ones. There are people out here that are inciting. So I do understand the need for policing, right?
Sure.
But
Absolutely.
if a person in the street can get a crowd hype because of the tone in which he uses and the the gestures and the tone and everything in which he uses, he can anger a whole crowd. Then you, sir, can calm a whole crowd and calm the spirit of a whole people by the tone in which you use. And if you are to me the same as the people on the street. Like, to me, if you're using the tone of violence and the tone of that type of thing to control people's behavior, you are the same as the people that you are trying to control. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's the same to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right,
you're not
right.
law and order, you're weak to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not law and order. That's
Well, I think
that's
it's
weakness
important,
to me.
man. I think it's really important to have a sense of dignity and class when you're in
Yeah,
positions of leadership, whether it be a business or government, anywhere you have to guide or lead a large group of people, or lead anybody. You lead
right,
anybody other than you lead your family.
right,
There's a sense of dignity, I believe, because your behaviors are going to be modeled by other people. When you
right,
say things, the people are going to repeat them. When you behave a certain way, people are going to model that. So I think it's important to have, a leader, be it, a D or an R, red or blue, is
right,
is someone who is modeling dignity, whether you agree with policies or not. The
right.
issue, I think, is because if you're a decent human being, now I may not agree with, specific policies, on the right or the left,
Yeah,
but if there's a certainly, level of dignity and respect, because you have to say, okay, can my child look up to this person? Now you can tell them
right,
that this person is doing wrong in terms of the decisions they're making, but
right.
is their behavior respectful? I remember the first word that I remember my father ever teaching me. I was about 5 years old, maybe. And I remember I got in trouble, did something uncool. My mom got mad, and my dad pulled me aside, pulled me out the backyard, didn't yell at me, didn't scream, didn't raise his voice, didn't whip me, just talked to me quietly, leaned over on the rail
Mm-hmm,
and said, "Do you know what respect is?" And
mm,
he explained to me what respect is, about treating other people the way you want to be treated.
right,
And I never forgot that. 5 years old. That's the first real big word that I learned. And so that's been kind of the foundation of everything I've tried to do, whether it's teaching my kids or dealing with people in business or ministry or on the street. I don't care how high you are, how low you are.
right,
I may not like you, but I will respect you.
right,
And you may not like me, but you will respect me, or it's going to be a
right,
problem. You ain't got to like me, you ain't got to love me, but you will have to treat me with a level of decency and respect. And
right.
so for me, when I see the level of disrespect that is
Mm-hmm,
consistent, and the selfishness, that the showmanship. And again, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this guy, but the concept, he really is a poster boy. It's really not so much him, it's a system thing that he really personifies. It's
right,
not just him, it's really he's the poster child of selfishness, pompousness, white supremacy, that all of these things, business, hustling, bobbing and weaving, being a used car salesman. Yeah, I got the good one, but it's fake. It's really no good. You're gonna sell your car, but it's gonna break down next week.
right,
So that kind of hustle man mentality of constantly lying, that carnival barker mentality, is really something that is pervasive in the United States of America as a whole. We've
right,
bought into Showtime,
right,
Mantan. We love the Showtime, and that's who we are now. We're all entertainers. We're always on our cell phones. We're always
right,
on social media. Most people you see on social media in one way or another is lying about who they are.
right,
They're embellishing who they are. They've taken their social media resumes to a whole nother level.
right,
You know what I'm saying? And so the challenge is when you see them in person, they've got the fake this, the fake that, the fake this, and they're not real. When they start taking off their parts, be it physical parts or professional parts, you start to realize that the real person is nothing like what they've built up.
right,
And so what I'm getting at is that he really is the personification of that. And the challenge is right now when people are starting to say, hey, the emperor has no clothes. And I'm one of those kind of people. I'll tell you in a minute, the emperor is butt naked. And we sitting
right,
here ignoring that hey, matter of fact, not only is he naked, that's offensive to me. That's
right.
disrespectful to the children around me, the women around me. Tell him put some clothes on. And so
Yeah,
the people who didn't say anything were the people right next to the emperor who were just as complicit, because they didn't say anything. They didn't
right,
go to the leader and say, hey, man, you're wrong. What you're doing is wrong. I say it in love, and I say it for the benefit of the kingdom. And one of the things we do, and we do it in church, we do it in business, we do it in media, We don't
Right.
tell the person who's in power that they're wrong or they're missing. Hey man, you got toilet paper on your shoe. We don't
Right.
say nothing. We just let them go on because the check is good. When that bag is good, the love of money is the root of all evil. Loving that bag.
Let me ask you something. So there were, and I think this is a change in culture. It's a positive change through this situation. If I only get this out of this situation, I think I've got something good. There have been a ton of companies that came out in support directly for Black Lives Matter this time, which is a complete difference from the last time. Now, the last time, Nike still came out for Kaepernick, and a couple of companies, but this time, man, Twitter, Netflix, Amazon, Target released a whole statement. There were a lot of companies, and so in this time, there are a lot of different companies who are making the stand, even if the politicians are not really. And I think that there are a lot of politicians who are trying to partisan this. And I was like, man, you can't really partisan this particular issue. But there are a lot of companies that are like just hardcore taking the side. And I think that, I was talking to my wife earlier, and I was like, I think I'm going to find a list of companies, and I'm going to look at who I do regular business with. And if you haven't put out a Black Lives Matter statement about this issue, I will not buy from you, period.
Man, but you know what? It's interesting, man, not to cut you off, but man, the challenge is the last time we went through this, or the last election, or the last big issue that I found the challenge is that list is so small in terms of who you can support. Because if you look at Walmart, put up a bunch of money for 45. You look at other entities like
Walmart
Home Depot.
wasn't on the list.
Yeah, Home Depot is another, right? But then you start getting to a place like, well, where can I get my stuff at? Where can I buy food or lumber? Or, because that list gets so small.
Yeah, so for me, I'm gonna tell you how I have come to this is my financial protest, right? My financial protest is to try very hard to only support companies who have came out publicly for the Black Lives Matter movement, and with empathy to the cause, right? There is a long list of companies this time. It ain't a short list this time. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a long list of companies this time. HBO, Netflix, VH1, they're Nike. I'm looking at them all right now.
So do you think these companies are reaching
Apple.
for an audience, reaching for another segment of the market that they want to get? Because now they've got all these white protesters out here, and it's exciting now to be a protester in 20-something cities around the country. Or you think it's an authentic piece? Because Kaepernick tried to tell us a while back, and nobody was feeling him.
I actually don't care.
Okay.
Like I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't care about your intent as long as you giving me as long as you supporting what I want you to support.
Yeah, I hear you.
Because I think that's a lot of our. We care more about that type of stuff than we care about getting things done. Right. And I think that's one thing that Diddy has been saying, and it's one thing that Charlemagne has been saying, and there's one thing that Angela Rye has been saying. There's one thing that's a lot of the younger African American quote unquote the younger spokespeople of African Americans. What are you doing for me right now? What are you going to do for me?
So results as opposed to reputation.
Results. Give me the results.
Yeah,
say that, you know what, these people spend a lot of money over here, so I'm going to have to, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not turning these people
but that's a good
down.
point, though, man. If you think about what Dr. King said towards the end of his life, he started pressing on the money thing. He went down the whole list of, he said, they started when the first European immigrants came over, they started giving them subsidies, land grants.
Right.
And GI and the GI Bill in World War II,
Right.
white military personnel got them, and a lot of the black ones did not. And so he said, look, we came to get our check.
Right.
And when you start hitting them in the bank, things start to adjust. And the number one consumers in America are Black folks.
Absolutely. And not only that, and I think the companies owe it to Black people to care about their interests when they're accepting their money like that. But so I feel like, in this era, you got to pay it. Now, obviously, if you can't find a grocery store on this list, right, you got to go to your local grocery store, right?
Right.
But for me, I'm like, I'm going to look for first off, I'm going to look for Black owned, right? That's just me. The first thing I'm gonna look for is Black owned. After that, when my resources run out of Black owned, like when I can't find what I'm looking for and from a Black owned place, I'm gonna look for who supports the Black community first. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I think that. And then if, once I get past there, then I have to go to whoever else. But like, but for me, one of these companies on this list was Amazon. One of the first companies to come out and speak against or for the Black Lives Matter movement directly, and to come out for the what had happened and name George Floyd and by name and all of that stuff. One of the first companies came out on Friday was Amazon. Right, which means that great, I can keep buying from Amazon. There's not another.
You're gonna be in trouble without them.
What's that?
You said what? Ain't no other Amazon.
Well, no, it's other Amazons.
Well, not on that level, bro.
Not on Amazon level, but there's other companies that sell the same thing as Amazon that you could
sure
rival with. But so for me, I think one of the first things you do is you turn to the people who are resonating with your message first, and that's how you're going to get results on an economic scale. If the bank's not resonating with your message, I'm sending my money to the bank that is, and you know what I'm saying, like, and I think that's the way we should be thinking. We should be thinking like, who is on our side, who is behind us, who is backing us, and that by who is not who talks behind the when the light's not on. No, who posted, who tweeted, who what I'm saying. And
what's interesting though, but what you said while you're on that note about finances and the economic favorability of those who are supporting the issues that are important to the African American community, I think it's also important to think about. The economic stuff is important, but we also need to think about how do we support one another, and in the consistent voices out front. Because like I saw something today, somebody posted, said, well, what, they were kind of being sarcastic, what is really the movement, or what is the real protest about? How do you know or measure success? Is it based on all 4 police officers being arrested and charged, or what is it based on? And so if you think about it, there's no real voice, no individual or a couple of voices out front heralding what the 3-point plan or 5-point plan is.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying? And if it's arrest, tried, convicted, well, what else while we've got everyone's attention is important? Are we making investments in Black communities? Are we investing in Black-owned business? Are we getting low interest rates on home loans and small business loans? Educational loans.
Are we moving towards the end of American tyranny? That's to me. What are we all going to come together to be victorious over tyranny? Victory over tyranny. That's.
But let me ask you this, man. How does that happen? Because I sat there and I watched today, man. Literally 30 minutes before the curfew was supposed to happen in DC. I'm watching TV. It's a quiet, but peaceful protest. And you got military personnel, law enforcement, blocking this thing. And you got another 30 minutes. And they, and protesters, they'll go all the way right up to it's time for them to tell you to go home. Right. So literally at 30 minutes before, they literally started moving towards the protesters and physically started pushing people, throwing people back, knocking them down. I mean, it got violent real quick. And it was instigated by somebody called that shot. Right. Somebody called that shot and said, hey, we're going to push them back physically. Right. And when you start talking about pushing back against tyranny, How do you do that? Individuals who are in law enforcement and in military positions and support systems in the government have to say something.
Right.
You know, because if you're just taking it from the dictator, and that's not even the kind of laws or the kind of government that we have. You know, there's a system of laws. There's three branches of government, but the challenge is how do you push back what is becoming tyrannical or has become tyrannical?
I say it like this. I said this on my social media earlier. I think that protesting is important. Using your voice, we got our social medias. I have this whole platform here that we're building. Using your voice to protest and to speak and communicate the issues. Or your social media or whatever your voice is, getting on the street and marching, protesting is important to get the issues heard. Using your vote, and while I don't agree with people that say beat them in the booth, beat them in the voting booth all the time, I don't agree with that, but I believe that is one point that everyone needs to do, right? It is about 10 that everybody needs to do, and everybody needs to do all 10 of them. But one point of it, and it's not no more important than going on the street and protesting. It is as equally important. Is if the same way I say if a company doesn't support Black Lives Matter, I'm not going to buy from them. If there is anyone running for any elected office that I have the power to vote for, if you don't support Black Lives Matter, you don't get my vote, Democrat or Republican, conservative or liberal. You don't get heard without that support. Period. Right? And so voting is an issue. Where I spend my money is also, like I always said, where I spend my money is the issue. Where we spend our money is the issue, right? If you don't support Black Lives Matter, I don't support you. That's it, right? If you don't support, if you don't support our culture, if you don't support the end of tyranny, if you don't support, if you don't come out against police brutality, if you don't support us, I will not spend my money there. Period. And and I will encourage everybody else. You got and don't miss me. I'm the leader of my family, and my family is inclusive of 5 voters right now. You know what I'm saying? I've got 3 adult children and a wife and myself.
Okay.
And we in different states. So, and so that's another issue. There is, where do you spend our money at? If the bank that you bank at does not support the issues that you support, do not bank there. That's it. I'm not one to say go all black, or because you'll run out of resources trying to go all black, because we haven't gotten there yet with every with infiltration of black stuff and in every part of every market sector. But I control who I spend my money with. So if Bank of America doesn't come out and say we support Black Lives Matter, Bank of America will never see a dime of my money or my company's money or any 3 of my company's money. You won't see them. You know what I'm saying? Also, for me, it's and this is important as it comes to black on black, is showing the type of love that you want to receive. Period. Right? I think that if we don't demonstrate what we want, what we expect, then we can't expect what we don't give. And so, in my opinion, blacks need to, we all need to show the type of love that we want to receive, not only to people. Not only to people outside of our race, but people inside of our race, right? We have to show the type of love that we want to, and the type of fairness and the type of justice, and that we got to show that to the people that we want to receive it, that we want to receive it from. And I believe also we have to pray for the people who pray for those who use you improperly. Pray for those who are unfair to you. Pray for those in which that we're trying to make that we're trying to make change. You know what I'm saying? Like in
Bless
the
those
areas
who
in which
curse you and pray for those who despitefully use you.
pray for those who despitefully use you.
That's rough. Now that's a rough one right there. That's a rough one.
Yeah, it's rough, and none of the stuff is really is really easy. Pray for those. That's the word I was looking for. Persecute. Pray for those who persecute you.
Right. Okay.
So therefore, while I'm gonna criticize Trump, I'm also gonna spend time in my prayer time. I'm gonna spend time praying for him.
Speaking of that, man, today as I watched him, I struggled. I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I struggled as I watched him walk.
Struggle every day.
Man, yeah, real talk, real talk. But peep this though. But peep this. See, today he walks. I didn't even realize that the church, St. John's, had gotten destroyed. Well, it wasn't destroyed; it was damaged in the protest last night. And so he, puts out this statement in the Rose Garden and physically walks from the White House, the quarter mile, not even quarter mile from the White House over to the church through Lafayette Park. And he gets there and he stands right in front of the church for a photo op and he holds up a Bible. And I'm like, what, this dude, I mean, he probably can't name one scripture, but I'm thinking he's standing in front. I mean, what is that? I'm torn. Now, I don't know where I still haven't come to a conclusion on how to feel or think about that yet, because he's holding up a Bible, which is the truth, and he's standing from a church, which is supposed to be holy ground, but we have not seen him live it or practice that. So when you start talking about pray for them which use you, and or bless them which curse you and pray for them which despitefully use you, he's been pretty despitefully using us. So as believers, we're supposed to pray for him.
Yeah,
But as black men from around the way, our first thought is to get, let me get you before you get me, or let me get you worse because you got me bad, so I got to get you worse. So that's what we're taught.
So here's my thought to that, Matt. My thought, and it's probably not the thought of a lot of people, but it should be. My thought is that my Christianity comes before my black.
And that's word, brother.
So
that's word.
So if I'm rebirthed in, if I was reborn into the kingdom of God, I'm rebirthed into the DNA of God, and therefore, birds birth birds, dogs birth dogs, gods birth gods, and therefore I have the DNA of God running through my blood.
Yes, sir.
In that vein, I would have to say that the Lord says says very particular things about the way that I feel versus the things that I do. He says, be angry, but sin not. Therefore, there is no sin in the way that I feel. He allotted me for the way that I feel. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm able to express myself and express my anger and express how I feel because he gave me that, he gave me that premise to express my anger the same way he expressed his anger when he walked up in there and they was doing commerce in the house.
Flipped over tables. Yeah.
The same way he expressed his anger, I he has given me the provision to express mine. But he also said in Deuteronomy 32:35, he said, vengeance is mine. Right?
Yeah.
And so he specifically told me in Deuteronomy, don't go, let me take care of your enemies. Let me take care of
This is my battle. It's my battle.
This is my battle. And he repeated it again in Romans. Paul repeated Deuteronomy in Romans when he said, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. He was repeating that when he says, the scripture says, vengeance is mine. Therefore,
but Lord, can I help you a little bit? Can I just get one or two jabs in?
Therefore, I got to trust that God has delivered empires to this very people that they are oppressed.
Okay. Yeah.
That's why I say victory over tyranny, because I understand that if I'm in the will of God, if I can read the last 2 months in Exodus, God delivers empires to the very people that the empire oppressed. And if my
wait a minute, stay right there for a minute. Hit that.
What's that?
What you talking about? To go on, dig in that a little bit.
If you read Exodus, right? So if we can relate anything to the black community in the Bible, we can say that the Israelites was enslaved in Egypt for 400 years. So our oppression in America is the same time length. 401 years ago was 1619. That's when we first came to this country as a, as a tool in order for them to have free labor, right? Or really cheap labor. So if we can relate our struggle to the same struggle of the Israelites, we would have to say that the Lord can the Lord can deliver the oppressed, the empire that once oppressed them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And the Lord can take down
that's
the
a good
entire
word, man.
empire, huh?
That's a good word.
And the
Yeah,
Lord
man.
can take down an entire empire that is not that, you got to remember the Lord gave Pharaoh several chances before he destroyed Pharaoh. And and we know that in Exodus, the Lord intentionally destroyed Pharaoh. It wasn't like he gave you chance after chance after chance after chance. Here go the snake. Here go the blood. Here go the locust. Here go the, chance after chance after chance after chance. And it wasn't until he took his son out that he got emotional. And then the Bible says the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. So he let them go, right? And they start going towards, and then the Bible it implicitly says the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, right?
Yeah, man.
The Lord sent them out there because the Lord knew what he was about to do. You know what I'm saying? And Pharaoh packed up everybody, 600 chariots. Let's go after them.
So,
600 chariots mean the whole fleet.
You know what blesses me about what you're saying, man? Because I mean, as we revisit that story, man, is that you say the Lord hardened his heart. Let's look to today, to 2020. The Lord could very well be hardening Donald John's heart to be a knucklehead. His heart to be hardened, man, for his purpose. Man, that's good, man. Because you think about it. What is it? Because God is trying to do something. I'm finding one thing is that people are unifying at the very least,
absolutely,
across gender, race, socioeconomic lines. Folks are unifying against a hardened heart.
Yeah, and the reason I say, it's really not about Republican or Democrat because they are both. Like I have Republican friends, right?
Yeah,
who empathize. Republican and conservative friends who empathize, who have never empathized before and so we know that it's not about the petty politics in America. It's about something much bigger at this point.
Yeah, man.
So I don't, while I understand everyone's anger, I get it. But like I said, I'm a Christian first, or I'm a follower of Christ, follower of Christ by my faith first. And so I believe him. I believe God when he says, I'm going to deliver to you the empires that oppress you. I believe him when he says vengeance is mine. And I'm like, all right, well, I ain't out here to break down stuff. I ain't out here to I ain't out here to sin. I ain't out here to break down stuff. I'm out here to win victory over the tyranny. And I understand how I'm going to do it. I don't understand how everybody else going to do it. I'm going to do it by first, if you support Black Lives Matter, it means you support me, right? So a politician, I will not go into a voting booth till I'm educated on every single politician. And I may just, because I did this mail-in ballot for PG County. They sent you get that? They sent the mail-in ballots out for PG County.
Yep.
It wasn't nobody on it, but I didn't know who the person was I was voting for, so I Googled them. And I was like, oh, all right, let me look this person up. What's your positions? What's your this? What's your that? What's your this? What's your that? So I might do mail-in ballots from now on just so I get the time to really research everybody on the ballot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because if you don't support what I don't support you. Democrat, Republican, Independent, I don't care. If you come out for what I support, then I support you. If you don't, you just don't win my vote. And